people are paying attention to what you're saying, and you're paying attention to what people are saying, and those actions and those words and those relationships that we all foster with one another really carry over into who you become as a person. And I think as long as you can keep that in your mind, it really changes how you act and how you speak and how you impact those around you. And it's just open the door for others because others have opened the door for you. And I think that that's just something very, very important to hold close to your heart.
Welcome to this week's As Unexpected podcast, when we talk to C-suite executives, entrepreneurs, and philanthropists about how they lead into the future when the future generally goes as unexpected. I'm Scott Marshall, your host, and my own professional experience has made me a believer that it's not how you show up when all goes as planned, but it is how you show up when things go as unplanned. Given all of their experiences, each of our guests has become very attuned to the fact that the future is not to be predicted. My hope is that this podcast can help all of you become better leaders by building the core leadership capabilities for leading in an uncertain world. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of As Unexpected. Today, we're talking to Kearney Doing. And Kearney has a terrific background, has been really successful in her career, and has some terrific stories to share with us today. I'm super excited to have you, Kearney. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Scott. It's great to be here. I'm really excited about it and look forward to this conversation.
Excellent. Kearney, if you don't mind, could you give our listeners a bit of background on yourself and then sort of give them a highlight of what work you do now?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm Kearney. I'm a vice president at Prosek Partners. I work in Prosek is an integrated marketing and PR firm. So we work across the board with professional and financial services companies. And that's what I've been doing for the last 9+ years after graduating college. I'm an alumni of the Semester at Sea program in the fall of 2014. And I still talk about it pretty much every day to this day.
Thank you for that introduction and that little prop for Semester C. So you've had quite a leadership journey, and uniquely in some ways, really mostly with a single organization. I'm guessing over that career trajectory, you've had a number of unexpected events happen. In fact, the unexpected is more expected. If you don't mind, can you start off this podcast with really sharing a story or two about something that has occurred in your professional career that was quite unexpected and how you showed up for yourself and for those around you?
Yeah, definitely. And I was giving this quite a bit of thought as I was preparing for this podcast of what were major moments that were unexpected, what completely derailed something. And it always went back to the smaller moments of unexpectedness that caused the most panic. The second day, so Prosek, you get into a PA program, which is a postgraduate program. It's 4 months back then, now it's 6 months. But the second day, I'm all excited. I've got this huge opportunity. I'm living in Stamford, Connecticut at the time. The first day I drove to work, the first day I drove to Fairfield, that's where the office was, no problem at all. But I was thinking, what are different ways to get to work? Do I want to drive every day? Do I want to take the train? There's tons of public transportation. Let's explore our options. And so the second day I decided to take the train. And that's a very normal, simple 15-minute Metro North ride from Stamford, Connecticut to Fairfield, Connecticut. Well, I'm from New Hampshire. We don't have a lot of public transportation, even though I had been through Semester at Sea. I traveled the world, and yet I ended up on the Amtrak from Stamford to South Station, Boston.
Okay.
And I'm sitting there and I'm like looking around. And I'm like, wow, this is kind of like people are really settling in for a commuter trail, like train. Like this is a little weird. So I turned to the guy next to me, and he's clearly a professor. He's like got all of his papers out, and I'm like, where are we going? He's like, we're going to Boston. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. And so, I'm texting my boss at the time, and I'm like, I've lost my job. Second day in, this is it. This is a trial run anyway. And now I'm heading to a different state. And so that was pretty brutal. And I just remember sitting there and, when I look back, it's so funny, but when you're in it and you're thinking, I've worked so hard to get to this point, how did I manage to screw something up so bad that I'm missing pretty much my second day of work? We didn't have laptops. We didn't have Outlook on our phones at that time, I don't think, just for security purposes or whatever it was. And I just remember thinking I've blown it. Like, this is not good. But in that moment of time, too, I mean, it's easy to say as you reflect giving yourself grace. But I think in those moments, you really do have to calm yourself down and say, this is the reality. You're in this situation. Your boss is saying it's fine. No worries. Easy to kind of spiral a little bit, but you just got to take a moment and recognize that this is the reality. What are you going to do next? And so now it's a good story to tell, but when you're just out of college and you're trying to make a mark and this company has bet on you and this is how you show up or don't, that is a little tough. So that was probably one of my first most unexpected moments in my professional career.
Can I ask you, how did your boss show up in that moment?
She calmed me down. She did not make a big deal about it. She just said, get here when you get here. I remember, I think I got off either in Providence because it made one stop, and I just took the train right back and into the office, and everyone had a big old laugh about it. But it was thankful to her too for being understanding. I mean, she could have handled it a variety of different ways, and I don't know what I would have done if she was like, well, keep going, take your train all the way back to Boston and see you later. She would have never ever said that, and thank God she didn't. But yeah, she was very forgiving in that moment, and she knows, things happen.
They do happen,
Yeah,
and we have to really embrace when things do happen. But I'm curious, how does that show up in your own leadership with
yeah.
those who report to you?
There's so many stories I have in terms of like silly things that I did when I first started, and still to this day. I mean, in using those stories, I mean, we had an offsite once at a hotel, and you know the the message in my brain was meet as many people as you can. And I still encourage everyone I manage to do that, peers, everyone, meet, meet, meet. And we were sitting there, and the CEO was there, and the head of HR was there, and there was another woman standing there. And I went up and I introduced myself to the CEO, the head of HR, and also this woman. And they very nicely said she works here. She's organizing the offsite as the person at the conference center. And I was like, well, just meeting more people. And it was a little embarrassing at first because I was like, oh gosh, like I've really overdone myself. But in that moment, it was the eagerness to meet people, and you make those small mistakes, but once again, you laugh at them. Um, and I think there's been times too that I'm able to reflect on with the people that I manage and just make sure that it's relatable. Like, we are all humans just trying to get through the day and trying to be really good at what we do. And that comes with pushing yourself. And when you push yourself, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make silly little errors. And just making sure that the people that I manage understand that that's okay. And sometimes it's encouraged. You want to make those small mistakes behind the scenes so that when you're working with clients and you've got big projects and you've got these really hard deadlines, and you're working with top line executives, that those mistakes don't show then and they don't happen then. And if they do, we work through them. But making sure everything's allowed to come out in the background and working through those in moments of humility, I encourage that. That's something that makes you human.
That's brilliant. And given what Prosek does and what your role is, my belief, my assumption is that you are strongly encouraging people to be innovative, to be creative, to constantly stay on the edge of what technology is offering. And within that, you have to be willing to make mistakes if you're pushing the edge. What are some of the ways that you have encouraged your team to be innovative, or you yourself have, fail fast, fail forward? I think it feels a little cliche because we also have to be successful and we have to be accurate and we have to
Right.
keep our clients happy. So, how do you find those conversations where it is fail fast, but it's also be professional, be accurate, be high quality? How do you balance those conversations?
Yeah. I think it goes back to asking as many questions as possible. I think it's that intellectual curiosity. We really push that. That's like one of Prosek's mantras, is just to ask those questions. And what I encourage is, if you can't Google it, because that's one big prerequisite. If you can't type it in Google and get your answer, then ask it. And those are the smart questions, and those are the conversations that you have within your teams that foster that innovation. I've been really, really fortunate to be at an organization that encourages asking those questions and encourages turning to anybody and asking for advice if you're in a situation that you haven't handled before. A lot of PR is working from experience, and that comes. You can take as many lessons as possible. You can write as many emails, but it really comes with time. And I think as long as you're at an organization that encourages you to explore and push yourself and take on opportunities that you normally wouldn't have in a place that kind of keeps you in your lane, Prosek encourages you to step out of that, and really step up. If you're at the table, make your presence known. Why are you sitting at the table and what do you bring to it? And asking those questions that fuel those conversations to get to the solutions, it's conversation, and it's really just it's just having those conversations that gets you to the result.
This episode of As Unexpected is sponsored in part by Semester at Sea, a study abroad program for college students and adults on career breaks, sabbaticals, or retired, interested in learning and exploring the world together. Learn more about the Lifelong Learner program at www.semesteratSea.org. I love it. I 100% agree that curiosity is a core trait of the practice of leadership.
Yeah.
And I also believe that leadership is not positional. Leadership is a
Yep.
practice. So
Yep.
you're definitely building that in yourself and your team. One thing, going back, Dare to Lead by Brene Brown, there's something in there that she talks about in asking for advice, asking for insight, asking is actually a sign of strength.
Yeah.
And how do we make sure people have that strength?
Yep. And that's a really interesting point too. And I think, my parents always instilled this in me is meet people. Once again, it goes back to putting yourself out there, and it doesn't matter if you're introverted or extroverted, shy or confident or whatever it is, and those aren't opposites. But I think it's just important to get to the notion of it's okay to send an email that says, "Hey, I'd love to talk to you about your career and how you got to where you are." And it can be as simple as that. Even if you're trying to ultimately build your network professionally, sending something so simple as that is at least opening that door to building that relationship. And I think people get really stuck on that. I think typing out that LinkedIn message or that email that just you're writing to a total stranger or a friend of a friend or a family friend that you've never met before, it's a really simple sentence that just says, I respect where you are in your life. How can I learn from you and how can you teach me? But also, let's just have a conversation as humans. You don't need to get something out of it. It's just exploring and learning is really the key to it.
100%. So you probably know in my role, people listen to this podcast who are quite a bit younger than me. They say, well, you're advanced in your career. And I'm like, no, this has to start no matter where you are in your career. Because now I have to reach out to people who haven't been in touch with the program for 20, 30, 40 years and try to get them connected to us. And then I have to see if they'll actually start to commit philanthropically to the organization. And even at my age, even in my professional experience, like there's a little anxiety about it, right? And so no, you're right. The earlier you start that process, the earlier you start to just ask and build relationships, the better off you're going to be.
But lucky for you, Scott, the thing is you're asking folks who went on Semester at Sea to talk about Semester at Sea, and that is our favorite thing to do. It's not that hard. It wasn't that hard of a yes.
And I never tire of hearing those stories. Yeah. I just don't. Everybody's got these brilliant stories. And of course, we have another voyage about to begin, which is super exciting. Yeah. So we have a video for you, and I want to explore what Cookie and Cam have to say because, again, your experience is really apropos to this. But I think anybody's current work life, whether they're just starting out or whether they're been in their profession for 10 or 20 or 30 years, this is really relevant today. And I really appreciate what we talked about earlier. I think you have some great insights here. So we're going to allow Cookie and Cam to come in and talk about a really pertinent issue in today's workplace.
We know that early career professionals, especially new college grads, are struggling to find entry-level opportunities in their respective fields. What does your organization think about employees early in their career, and what value do you think they bring to the workplace? Cookie, I'm interested in your perspective here too.
Yeah, I'm really curious to hear what organizations have to say about that. I feel like when you are hiring somebody that's young, a lot of times you're hoping to invest in them and hope that they're going to stay with you for a while. But I think it's more common now for people to jump jobs more quickly. So I'm really interested to hear what organizations think about that and how that shifts how they value these younger employees.
Absolutely.
Okay, Kearney. Cooking Cam have posed a question that's really relevant to our younger listeners, but also, again, to anybody wherever they are in their professional career. What do you think?
Yeah. So I think this is a really important question to ask. And it goes back to entering the workplace fresh out of school. I mean, you've got this very unique perspective. You've got fresh energy. You've got a new lease on life in terms of you've left college and now what? And I think as long as folks can bring that energy and that fresh perspective into this organization, and it's also reversal, it's a symbiotic relationship, right? It's we're learning from you and you're learning from us because we've also got a perspective and a different energy that we're bringing from years of experience. I think it all comes down to that respect of encouraging everyone to share their ideas, whether they're fresh out of school or they've been at the organization for 10, 20 years. Um, it goes back to that intellectual curiosity, but it also goes back to that responsibility of you've got this huge opportunity, you've landed a job. And I think finding a job now is incredibly difficult. There's so many different ways to apply. Recruiters are slammed with resumes because all you have to do is hit send. And I think it's just become this abundance of it's crazy. And I don't know much about the recruiting world, but that aside, you've landed a job. It's the organization's responsibility to make you feel comfortable and make you feel confident and set you up for success. But the reversal is that it's also your responsibility to really take that on and understand you're going to get in you're going to get out what you put into it. And I think that's incredibly important is what questions are you asking? What relationships are you fostering? Are you leaning in? Are you caring about the work that you're doing? And I think that's the difference of what makes somebody great versus good is you can get a task to be completed. Check the box, it's all good. But if you care about the work and you care about your client and you care about your team, you're going to push it that extra mile to make sure that it's done and done very well. And I think it's that caring aspect. So it's those three things of just asking the questions, caring about what you're doing, and just feeling like you want to be there and taking that responsibility to meet those folks that you need to meet. That is where it comes from. And I know we talked about this a little before the podcast started, but these, they sound, I don't want to sound curmudgeon-y, but generations that are coming into the workforce, I mean, they've been really hindered by this. We're all social behind our screens. We've got, long before the pandemic, we were all behind screens. But now new generations are coming into the workforce and they've also been behind screens for their education, for their internships. And it takes a lot of courage and a lot of conviction to pull yourself out of that and lean into an incredibly uncomfortable environment. And while that feels very scary, or it can, I just encourage anybody to really kind of shed that inhibition for a minute and just see what happens because it can really be so rewarding when you take that step that you're just so not used to taking.
I'd like to explore this further. I've read so much about Gen Z and the millennials, but Gen Z in particular, this new generation that's coming into the workforce. Of course, we got Alpha coming in soon, or whatever they call it. But you know, they get kind of a bad rap, and the idea that there's a lot of gig work and there's a lot of insistence on work life balance and um, the insistence on work from home and so on and so forth. And at our organization, we obviously went fully remote through the pandemic. And then we made the decision we're going to hire the best talent wherever they are and be essentially a hybrid remote organization and have all staff gatherings twice a year where connectivity is key. I'm not saying we have the right answer. because I also get concerned about this new workforce coming in and not, as you're talking about, getting personally connected to each other. The value of day-to-day interaction in person, not about water cooler talk. It's about truly getting to know someone and developing that mentorship type relationship. So how is your organization structuring that so that this young generation can have the work-life balance that they seem to want, but show up and work hard, are responsible, and are building those sort of mentor-mentee relationships?
Yeah. There's a lot to say about it. And I think personally, so when you start at Prosek, you get a mentor. So that's off the bat. You're set up for, you've got somebody to lean on to ask those questions that you might not want to ask your manager. But on a broader scale, I'm seeing with this generations that are coming in are fueled off of what they care about and their passion. And I think that they're so uniquely smart that maybe they're not energized by that water cooler talk, or they don't really, this is such a stereotype, but I think we've all kind of shifted a bit where it's no longer like the office events that are like, oh, this is why I'm here. Now it's about, what is my client doing that energizes me? What is my team doing to support me that energizes me, that I wake up in the morning and I look forward to working and speaking with these folks day in and day out rather than dreading it. I think it's this purpose based and cause based work that fuels all of us, really. Um, and that's really come to light from everyone being everywhere. It's just back to that purpose and what are we working towards, rather than some of the things that used to really motivate us. And I think that goes such a long way being in person, but I also feel like you've got to find those nuggets of motivation and inspiration for any generation that causes people to look forward to working together. And I think that that's really, at this point, it's rounding up around either a client you're super interested in, an industry you're super interested in. I mean, I just saw this happen with myself because having been here for quite a while, you hit a plateau in terms of, okay, where do I want to specialize in? What really grabs me? And right now it's defense technology and national security. And even saying that out loud, it's not something that I ever thought I would gravitate towards, but neither was financial services. Coming out of college, I minored in law. I had a really strong interest in sports. And then I entered this financial services company that I really knew nothing about. And they provide boot camps of industry learnings. So you've got 101s on hedge funds, investment managers, wealth managers. So you're really equipped with that knowledge. And I think that that's something that we're still doing to this day. It goes beyond your day-to-day work in terms of the PR stuff. And it's just building that foundation of the industry knowledge, which also levels back to what industries do you feel gravitated towards, and just working with different folks, and everybody has different interests. And that's also the benefit of working at an agency, is you are always fueled. There is always a chance for you to try something new. And that's kind of where my pivot came from, where I was like, I want something now that's sparking my interest. And that's exactly where I've kind of fallen. So yeah, I think it's just exploring different options. And at an agency, it's much more at your hands to do that. I think there's a lot of different businesses that don't necessarily have those options, but standing in my shoes and my experience, that's definitely something that the agency life has been able to provide.
There's a couple things there that I want to just explore a little further. So when I sort of go down below the surface of what you just talked about, it seems to me that you have a pretty solid understanding, if not a very good understanding, of what your core strengths are. And then you let your passion sort of wander a bit as you learn and grow. And
Yeah.
even at my ripe old age, I have to do the same. I have to
Yeah.
allow myself to understand where are my core strengths.
Yep.
And let's bring those to the surface and let my interests play out as I learn and grow.
Absolutely.
So that is brilliant, because I do get a sense that not just this younger generation, but I can go back to when I was in my early 20s. I felt like I had to have it figured out.
Yeah.
At that time.
Yep.
What's my career going to be? And then over time, we figure out, oh, the career changes.
Yeah.
Based on our interests, even if you're in the same company.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And I think too it's behind the scenes as well. I mean, everybody can work the 8:30 to 5:30, 9 to 5, whatever it is. What are you doing outside of work too that's fueling you? And I think that uh, as I've grown, I've learned that that's really fundamental to the energy you bring to work. Um, there was, I mean, I'm kind of a buy a ticket on a whim, watch a documentary, decide you need to go save the world type of person. And I just did this a few years ago in Costa Rica. I watched that documentary, Seaspiracy, and I bought a ticket to Costa Rica to go save the sea turtles. And it was a 2 week, 14-day thing. I took off work, I got approval, going to go volunteer. I'll be back. I didn't know where I was staying. No one spoke English. I took 3 different buses. I did take the right buses to this very remote place in Costa Rica where the population was maybe 40. And it was the most life changing experience aside from semester at sea that I really just pushed yourself. And that is the kind of confidence that you can bring out into your professional career and vice versa too. I mean, if you tackle a really hard project, if you tackle a really difficult client or an ask that you've never done before and then you finish it and it went well, that's also something you can take over to your personal life. So I think it's both of this risk and a reward, personal and professional journeys that intertwine. I don't think it's that work life balance. I think it's that work life interconnectivity that you're learning different things from different experiences. I think that that's a really important thing to just navigate and make sure you have so that you're showing up as your full self in both aspects of your life.
I love it. I love it. Let's abandon entirely that phrase work life balance.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
ridiculous phrase. I wish it never existed. It means you never are level. You're
Right. And you're not
constantly
human
balanced.
in work and you're not taking what you're learning from work into your personal life and that's both are valuable. So I think that that's super important.
Yeah, many years ago, I heard a phrase work life integration, which is essentially the
Mm,
same thing you've said, which is
yeah.
it's not about balance. It's about integrating all of our personal and professional lives, being human in all of it, treasuring relationships in all of it. That is spot on.
Yeah.
I love this adventure in Costa Rica. Where were you in Costa Rica?
So we were in Oceanal, and it is a very small remote. It's on the west coast of Costa Rica. Um, I showed up. It was through a umbrella program, and basically they kind of ship you out. They give you your directions of how to get on the buses. They give you your tickets that you've essentially paid for. They just organized it, and then you go and you're out on your own. And I remember being with 2 men from Sweden and a woman from Mexico, and we had all shown up in Costa Rica to do this program. You take an 8-hour bus out to the coast, and I mean, we showed up and the bridge was down because it had flooded. So now we're dropped off on the side of a road in Costa Rica. Everything is muddy. We've got our bags and our suitcases. I mean, our language barriers were interesting. And then you're kind of like, where are we going? We don't have a map. We don't have service, quite literally in the countryside. And I mean, there was no moment of panic though, because we were together. And I think that that's incredibly important too, is you've known these people for what, 24 hours, and now you're on the side of the road in a foreign country that you've never been to. But we could lean on one another and everyone had their own strengths of, okay, well, the bus was headed this way. Let's keep going this way. Okay, who can we trust that's coming to pick us up? Sure enough, the leader of the program came down. They had gotten word from another neighbor and of another neighbor that the bus had broken or the bus couldn't cross the bridge. So we got picked up. But it was one of those situations again where you're relying on those human connectivity points of we're going to get to where we're going. Just wasn't exactly how we thought. And I think that that's exactly true for work too. Like you bring it back to it wasn't the path we originally started on, but we got it done and we got it done well and we're proud of it. But Costa Rica was, I mean, it was incredible. I stayed with a host family. I was some 20 something at the time and was just so eager to try something new. But I remember I was reading my journal before I got on this podcast from Semester at Sea, and it's also Costa Rica too. And it's just my last kind of thing is this was just the most proudest moment was just doing this and not really having many reservations about pushing myself to do it because I thought I could. And I think that that's just something to really bring over.
Yeah. So there's the the metaphoric lesson here. When the bridge goes out,
Yeah.
how are you going to get to your destination?
Right. And talk about unexpected too. I mean, I thought I was going on this turtle saving retreat where during the day we'd save the sea turtles and we'd clean up the beach and we'd get all this rest. Our turtle monitoring times were 11 p.m. to 3 a.m., midnight to 4 a.m., and 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. There was no sleep. We were cleaning the beach during the day and we were saving the turtles at night. And I mean, I made some incredible friendships too through that because you're dropped off, you're there to do this volunteer work, and then everything in between is really what makes it so worth it and so valuable. So yeah, it was a remarkable experience.
Wow. I got to look that up. That sounds
Yeah,
phenomenal.
yeah.
Kearney, this has been super fun. Thank you so much for taking the time today. I know our audience is very much going to enjoy all that you've shared. Any last words for our audience before we end this?
Yeah, my last thing is something we learned on semester at sea, which is Ubuntu. And there's so many different interpretations of it, but it really is, to me, I am because you are. And I really try to channel this since learning that word through my entire life of people are paying attention to what you're saying and you're paying attention to what people are saying, and those actions and those words and those relationships that we all foster with one another really carry over into who you become as a person. I think as long as you can keep that in your mind, it really changes how you act and how you speak and how you impact those around you. And it's just open the door for others because others have opened the door for you. And I think that that's just something very, very important to hold close to your heart.
Beautiful. I am because you are.
Yep.
Perfect ending. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Have a
Scott.
great day, Kearney.
You too. Thank you.
This episode of As Unexpected is sponsored in part by Semester at Sea, a study abroad program where students visit 10 countries on 3 continents, all while taking 3 to 4 college classes through Colorado State University. See course offerings and upcoming voyage itineraries at www.semestersea.org. Thank you for joining this week's episode of the As Unexpected podcast. The viewpoints and opinions of featured guests do not necessarily represent those of the Institute for Shipboard Education or Semester at Sea. Hit the like button, share it with your colleagues, family, and friends, and remember, be curious, be compassionate, be courageous. That's what it takes to lead as unexpected.